Hi everybody, this is Warren Herman, and today we're going to talk about is this principle. A line beats a circle, and a circle beats a line. It's kind of a strange idea that comes out of the teachings of Kempo Karate, but the real deal that we're going to talk about is how we can apply this principle to understand how to deal with chronic illness and to understand how to deal with certain mental patterns. The deal here is that in the field of mind-body work, of TMS, of tension myositis syndrome, which is spoken about by Dr. John Sarno and people like Dan Buglio and Nichole Sachs and these kind of people, there is debate about the method to use to cure oneself from chronic conditions by, which are originating in our emotions. And many times there's folks like Dan Buglio who come down on the side of, journaling is more of an optional practice. And folks like Nichole Sachs who seem to really favor journaling as a practice that kind of counteracts the way that the body can produce symptoms as a result of stress and fear. So the real question is, what is a principle that we can use to understand this type of discrepancy, this type of difference that exists between these teachings? How can we understand this? And one of the ways we can understand this is by applying this principle. A line, and the first part of it is a line beats a circle. What does this mean for us in the treatment of TMS? It means that, when you look at the teachings of Dan Buglio, for example, simple and clear knowledge is like a line. It kind of just points one direction. You say, okay, I have TMS, I don't have this condition, this illness, that illness. Oh no, which one do I have? You have clarity. It's a line. Beats a circle. You don't want to have to be confused about your symptoms. Or, as Dan Buglio teaches, you go toward the steps toward resuming activity, almost like an exposure therapy. Like even though you have back pain, you get up, you move, you walk to the door, you do this and that. This is a way of doing this, that you kind of a line beats a circle, rather than these kind of things that your brain is doing. It's making all these muscles tense up. You go for it. You act. You take action. You break out of the pattern by taking action, and almost like an exposure therapy. Again, a line beats a circle. So how does this fit in with journaling? Now, in my experience, there are times when if I don't address something directly, like in an interaction with people or something like that, then I'm ruminating about something or get confused about where my life is going or things like that, because I'm not directly, then I'm worried because I don't know what's going to happen. So the thing that's very important is to take direct action, and then you have clarity, because confrontation leads to clarity. Going straight for things and getting clarity on what's going on is going to bring you less rumination in your mind. And I talk about this principle, in another video where I went in depth. I said, that oomph, the heat brings light. We kind of go, fire brings light. We have to, we have that desire to go direct and break through the kind of the ruminations of our mind. How does this apply to journaling? Well, sometimes, sometimes we don't, directly express our feelings straight, so it becomes symptoms, spinning, circle. Because we're not saying what's on our mind, we're tensing up. So sometimes the expression of our emotions, and, I feel that there's a difference between expressing and processing and venting. For example, I think this a simple guideline I use for this is, the idea of I statements. If I say something like, you stink, you're terrible, you're the worst, you this and that, you, that's not good. I don't believe that that's healthy. If we say, I feel upset about this, when you, because please, that's the standard format. But the main thing is that we don't want to kind of just make this into a thing where we're thinking thoughts that are objectively not thoughts we should be thinking, because we're just going, you're horrible, this is the worst, But we should say, I feel bad about this. I feel scared about this. I feel upset. This kind of respectful and direct sharing of thoughts, I believe, is the way to go. But going further, that's how to do it. But here's the thing. I mean, I've never really done that much journaling, but I think that, there is this way in which we can actually get benefit from this. But I think the thing is, we don't want to just make this into a way of kind of going around and ruminating or getting upset about what we're thinking or going into upsetness. I think it's about this directness. And so, because when we do something direct, we then don't have an indirect response from the body. So let me give you an example. Like the other day, I started to develop, usually my symptoms of TMS are ulcerative colitis. But because an event was coming up that I was concerned about on like a subconscious level, there were things I didn't want to have happen. I was like, I don't want it to turn out this way. I don't want it to turn out that way. I'm nervous it's going to go this way. I developed back pain. Now, once I went into the event and it was not happening that way, all of my back pain, like almost 90% of it disappeared instantaneously because what I was concerned about unclenched. So the thing is, again, a line beats a circle. And sometimes, we don't have the luxury of actually going into the situation we're concerned about that quickly. So maybe had I expressed those feelings directly, saying, okay, I'm scared of this, I'm disturbed about this, I'm scared of this, I'm disturbed about this, I feel upset about that, I would have used the principle of a line beats a circle to get out of the TMS loop. And so that's almost a way in which I think that these principles, whether it's Dan Buglio's idea about perceived danger, pain, and Nichole Sachs's thing about, these kind of repressed emotions through journaling, these I think are very similar, because the thing is that, on one hand, I think each can illuminate the other, because in a way, both of these things follow the principle of a line beats a circle. They both follow this thing of like when we go for something, when we break out of fear, when we stop living in the prison of TMS, we become able to function well. That's kind of a way that we can do that. So that's kind of I think a very important understanding. And in my previous video about TMS, I also mentioned the teachings of Tom Loud. I don't pray exactly the way that he prays for people for healing. I use a little bit of a different format. But anyway, he's probably the main person that I learned from, and that was part of my journey in overcoming ulcerative colitis as well, was using the teachings of Tom Loud. And you almost can see that the Tom Loud's teachings are essentially a spiritual version of Dan Buglio's natural things. So you could see this principle that I described in a previous video, that grace builds upon nature. That, as Dan Buglio talks about giving our body messages of safety by telling ourselves calm, having right understanding and giving calm messages. Tom Loud talks about having an understanding of one's authority and then giving calm messages of authority and power and healing to the body. So it's very similar. Like it's just one is the natural version of the other. Like Tom Loud, like Dan Buglio will say there's nothing wrong with you, and then you understand there's nothing wrong with you, and then you tell your body, like, I'm okay, I'm good. This is just passing pain. This is just this is just TMS. Let me keep moving. Whereas Tom Loud will say, okay, understand that you're a child of God. You have healing. If you pray, healing can happen, so on and so forth. And then he says, then go out and pray for people and and just pray and know that people are going to be healed, because that's the way it works. Essentially, I mean, I would explain it slightly differently theologically, but it's the exact same thing of this message of clarity about our identity, and then this message of this safety. With this clarity about what's going on ultimately, and this then acting on this message of safety that we send either through a prayer or through a comment to ourselves. A prayer for ourselves or others, these kind of things. And even Dan Buglio he's obviously giving messages of safety to other people, and that's affecting healing in them on a natural level. So we could see these parallel teachings. But again, what does Tom Loud, because he was very similar to Dan Buglio, does he do anything that is similar to Nichole Sachs's journaling method? And in fact, he does. And I want to share this with you because nobody's linking this stuff together with TMS and all this stuff. Tom Loud does a process that he calls psalming. And Tom Loud, rather than the journaling, he's expressing his emotions through prayer. And he expresses the emotions. It's a really beautiful and powerful process. And I want to share it with you right now. Because, for example, in the Psalms, you see this full range of emotions. And again, I like being respectful, and I think that that's more helpful than venting in a negative way. I think that it could be, like if I say, I don't think it's good to tell God is terrible and say things like that. I think that's a bad thing to do. I think it's bad to I don't think it's good for us to think terrible thoughts about other people. We can say everything that we feel. I believe we're allowed to say every feeling we possibly have. We just have to say it in a respectful way. I think that's also very helpful in integrating that emotion with us, because if we just do it in a raw way, it's also not integrated, and that's also not being processed. It's just being vented and indulged. So I don't think that that's good anyway for emotional healing. But here's the deal. We have to be honest about what's going on. So I believe that the psalming process is really good, because there's the Psalms have this almost this structure of this painful comments, this praise of God, and then this hope in God. Tom Loud explains, when you have a feeling, you say, okay, God, I'm so upset about this situation. You could even say things like, sometimes I'll say this, I feel like you're not going to help me with it. But I'm saying a feeling. I feel like you're not going to help me with it. But I thank you that you are powerful and you are merciful, and that you are going to save me, that you are going to rescue me, that you are going to do these things for me. I thank you that your help is on the way. So you can see the beginning is, I feel this way. You are this way. I thank you that you're going to do this. It's like this thing of just having this structure, just like the Psalms in our prayers. And I believe that this practice, just like Dan Buglio talks about perceived danger and perceived danger is the problem, messages of safety are the solution. Tom Loud talks about how understanding our identity, and then these commanding, calm, assertive prayers of healing are the solution. And just like Nichole Sachs says, okay, you have to journal. Tom Loud says that. Tom Loud actually says, just like he says the same thing as Nichole Sachs, and he says the same thing as Dan Buglio. He has something that is his way that he walks up to people and does healing prayer is in many ways analogous to Dan Buglio's teaching, and his teaching kind of on the side where he mentions psalming as a practice is analogous to Nichole Sachs's teachings. So I wanted to share this with you guys, because for many people, they may not want to journal, but if you take a time of prayer and you use that psalming framework, I believe that you can get the same results as Nichole Sachs's journaling thing, and maybe better results, because you're not only venting the positive feelings, you're also expressing your faith. You're making sure you're kind of throwing up the yucky feelings out of your stomach, and then taking in a better food of belief in God. And that's kind of I think that psalming recommended by Tom Loud is another way of doing the journaling that is recommended by Nichole Sachs for the recovery from TMS. So I hope that this is helpful to you in your journey with TMS and in your spiritual life. So obviously there's a lot more to be said, about these practices, but I'm just sharing these analogies because I want to promote that practice of psalming, of that respectful stating of, I feel upset about how my life is going, but God, I know you're merciful. Thank you that you're going to help me. Because, because we may not always, journaling doesn't need to be the only way. People, telling somebody about our feelings can be the way to do it. Whatever it is, it's it doesn't have to always be journaling, and prayer can be a way of telling someone. And again, that telling, that psalming, that direct stating of it is a direct action. It makes it into a direct stating of that thing. Because a lot of times what's happening is we're not stating directly how we're feeling. Instead, we're like behind everything is this feared self, and then the mind is always ruminating and confused. And in ICBT is a therapy approach. They talk about the feared self drives all the obsessions. So if you have this, if you don't vent that underlying fear, all the obsessions, including TMS symptoms, can come up. All those indirect things kind of bubble up. So I feel like that stating one's feelings in the practice of psalming also is that idea of a line beats a circle, because even on a natural level, there's things like in AA where people, admit their faults to their sponsor, or, I mean, that's not necessarily going to redeem you from your sins, but if you telling somebody what you did when you were drunk, maybe there can be, in a way, you could see how that practice, whether you like the practice or not, you could see how that practice would make someone not ruminate as much with the guilt by, stating directly what they've done rather than like hiding it and so you can see how always a line beats a circle. A direct admission admits, a direct action stops rumination. So again, all these things are all about being direct. They're all about having, certainty of knowledge about things, or clarity of knowledge about things, and then giving these clear messages of safety to your body, or directly expressing one's emotions. It's all a line beats a circle. So I hope that this is helpful to you in like getting a kind of seeing the common ground, not only between Tom Loud's approaches and those of the TMS community, but also understanding the similarity of all these approaches and realizing that they are ways out of the rumination that is also TMS. So I hope that this is helpful in your recovery.